Well, Grant, it's really nice to see you. I trust you're keeping well in these COVID times.
Yes, no, thank you very much. We're in lockdown in Sydney, but I am keeping well. Thank you.
Well, always darkest before the dawn, I guess. So look, you lead KPMG's Global Tax Policy Group, and there's just been a lot of news coming out from the OECD recently. Can you tell me a bit about your perspectives on this?
Well, the G20 just issued a communique on the 9th and 10th of July, endorsing the Inclusive Frameworks Agreement, which was made on the 1st of July, in relation to a global minimum tax and a reallocation of profits from two market jurisdictions, which is the profit is between 20% and 30% above a 10% threshold. Matthias Cormann, Pascal Saint-Amand, Matthew Kreinberg have said this is remarkable, historic, and similar language. And just recently, the French foreign minister said there's no turning back now, and this is a one-in-a-century change. So I do believe this is significant. Many agreements just descend to lower levels of optionality, but this is one with a real trade-off. Countries agreeing to give up a digital services tax or similar taxes in order to get a cut of profits in relation to the reallocation to market jurisdictions and, of course, a global minimum tax. The timeline for implementation in relation to this is very, very tight. So it's due to be finalised as an agreement in October of this year, with adoption in 2022 and implementation in 2023. And that will be a very significant timeline to achieve. The drive here for political agreement was absolutely huge. And there is a sweet spot, I think, in terms of the US electoral cycle in making sure that something gets done. This is broadly a movement in some sense to a small movement to destination type taxation in terms of Pillar 1. And that's an interesting observation. And there are also questions that countries are actually giving up a degree of sovereignty for certainty in mandatory binding arbitration. And so there's a pendulum there where certainty has become more important than sovereignty. Not everyone is on board, but the structure of this, particularly in relation to Pillar 2, which is a common approach, is such that countries will, even if they're not on board, will be impacted by this, and so that they effectively move into the fold. Watch this space unfold. The next 6 or 8 months are going to be very, very interesting in terms of the releases that are going to happen in October, and make sure you're prepared for change and can actually understand how these changes will affect your organisations. Thanks, Rodney.
Well, Grant, that's really interesting, that last point, because I bet you get that question all the time. What, if anything, should I be doing right now? Because it is a very tight time frame. What do you say in response to that?
I think, firstly, you should be having a high-level assessment of how this can impact you. Secondly, you should be having conversations with the CIO, because there are many areas here where the system is going to have to be put in place, and CIOs really like advance warning in respect of that. Thirdly, there needs to be a communication with senior management and the board as to how things might unfold. And fourthly, to the extent that one wants to or needs to get involved in trying to shape how the detailed rules are going to work out, you really need to know how your organisation is going to be affected so that you can make some input in relation to that process.
So really interesting, Grant. And I guess that's a really great point, right? These things don't spin on a dime. If you're going to need the systems in place, you're going to need to give people enough notice to start figuring out, well, how do we accommodate rules like this?
Yes, no, absolutely.
Okay, well, Grant, it's a real pleasure catching up with you again. It's nice to see you, and I look forward to the next time we catch up in person.
And same. Thanks, Rodney.